I don't know if I should give a break and wait for the people. Or, huh?
Let them self-organize.
Okay. So, I'm going to talk about a project called Rhyzomatica. I'm not the founder of the project, neither the person that have worked more on it. I just been a volunteer helping on it for a few months in Mexico. But yeah, so I actually have some notes. Give me a second. Yeah. Anyway, in Mexico, for whoever don't knows me, the project is developed in Oaxaca, and I want to give a bit of introduction on how Oaxaca it is, because there is a lot of specificities that I think that makes this project possible on this situation. So Oaxaca is in Mexico. You see the map of Mexico is actually here. Probably Chiapas sounds familiar to many people here because is where the Zapatistas are. So Oaxaca is just close to it, but it has a pretty different story than the Zapatists. Is not directly involved in a revolution like the Zapatists, but in the other way, like the local communities, they still have a lot of assemblies and horizontal organizations, so they didn't need to remember how to do these things because they still have them. So actually, most of the communities, when I say communities, we can call it villages. They are based on traditions, and their traditions usually are that, for example, there is no private land, like there is a communal management of the territory, and that there is no parties or elections, that they have assemblies that take decisions and rotative positions for the tasks that needs to be done. So, for example, one of the first rotative positions that usually you have when you are a teenager is to be part of the police. That basically the police, what it does is to take the drunk people in the street and put it in the jail for the night, so they don't make disturbs. That's basically what happens in the villages. And there is a lot of more responsibilities in the community, like whatever, fixing the roads, or so this all is rotative. I think I have like, I'm sorry I'm a bit disorganized because I didn't prepare this talk. I just came up with the idea of giving the talk yesterday, so I'll try to give an introduction. What I was about. So yeah, for the communities there to have communal things and to manage things as things on their own is normal. So for me, well, that's one of the key points why this project is working there. We are not coming with new ideas and teaching them how to do communal things. They are doing that since ages. It's actually them who teach us how to do that. Another, for me, really interesting key point of Oaxaca that I think also shaped a lot. In 2006, there was what's the word in English? The teachers just stopped going to the schools, and there was a strike of teachers. This strike became into that all the population rise up, and for 6 months, the city was managed by the population. They basically kicked out the government of the region, and they were having barricades in the streets, blocking the street, and like basically governing themselves. There was they built up this assembly of popular assembly that was in fact governing. And there was a lot of interesting things there. For example, there is a big tradition of radio communities. Radio, I'm talking about FM, communities in Oaxaca. So in this revolution, strike, the radios were a key point to keep the things running, as there was a lot of chaos on the demonstrations and in the city. The radios were the main nexus of information flow. And every time that you knew something that was needed to know, you called the radio, you inform about it. So they were pretty important for that. And actually they were so important, the experience that they have on the radios, that they basically actually squatted the TV for several weeks. The women of Oaxaca, because we're just basically a woman movement there, took the TV and just started running the TV themselves and making their own programs. Of course, as many of these things, it ended up with like the army entering in, killing a lot of people, and I'm not going to give many details here about that. I guess you can see there is some really nice documentaries about that. But these have teach lesson to the people in Oaxaca. And one thing is like, I have the feeling that the people in Oaxaca in general, the population is pretty active, actively politically, so they think and have opinion of things. And also they learn that to have community radios is really important. So they actually, you go to a small village with 1,000 inhabitants and they have a community radio there. And they have like radios everywhere. So that's another key point for me, how this project is succeeding, because it's actually inheriting from the radio culture that they already have there. So I can enter more a bit into it. So Mexico is where the richest man on earth lives. I'm not sure if it's the richest, the second one. Anyway, Carlos Slim. He is the owner of the main telecommunications company in Mexico. And they only arrive to the places that is commercially interesting for them. So they go to major cities, but they don't go to remote villages or communities. And when I'm talking about villages, I'm talking sometimes about places with 5,000 inhabitants. It's not that small sometimes, but anyway. So they just reach the big cities, and there is connectivity only in the big cities. So the communities, they are since a long time requesting to the government or to any other way to get telephony in their places. Usually there is like some few landline lines, but there is really, really few. So usually it's just the mayor that has a line, and that's it. The country home. So at some point, that was like something around 2 years ago, a bit more than 2 years ago, they started a legal battle to try to get license to own their own GSM networks, their own mobile telephony. So they basically united as an groupation of indigenous communities, and with the help of a really cool lawyer, they managed to get a license for community use. So it's, as far as I know, it's the only place in the world where a license for GSM is being given to just an organization, not a big corporation with a huge budget. So once this license is there, there was this bunch of hackers in Oaxaca that just started to play with the technology. And we are lucky that they didn't have to start from scratch. In the 90s, end of the 90s, or beginning of the 2000s, thank you. Yeah, there was the patents on GSM expired. When I'm mentioning GSM, for whoever don't know what it is, I guess you're familiar with 3G. GSM is 2G, basically. So the patents on GSM expired, what makes possible to start playing with it. And there was this crazy hacker in Germany that he basically bought what is called a BTS, a GSM transmitter.
It's good.
Did I? Okay, a GSM transmitter. He bought it, and when I'm talking about the GSM transmitter, I'm talking about think about something like probably 5 meters per 2 meters per couple of meters. We're talking about like a room of electronics, and he just bought it, put it in his house, and started playing with it. Like, can I do that thing can I make this thing working just with free software? And there was a project called OpenBTS that did a lot of cool things. OpenBTS, I didn't test it myself, but it seems to be really nice for testing purposes, but not really reliable. After that, they started another project called OpenBSC, that I can't get later in the technical details, but OpenBSC is becoming really reliable, and it's based on open source software, and also there is even open hardware implementations of it, so you can even have your own transmitter with open hardware. So based on all this technology, the Rhyzomatica people started to build up these community networks. So they went to the local communities and proposed it to the assembly, like, yeah, we can build up telephony here. And so the model that they proposed was like that the community buy, own, and manage the network, and they just help them technologically. So the communities, they register and control their network, and only when there is technical problems, these hackers come in and help them. So, as I say, for the communities to have common resources is pretty normal. So for them to have the telephony as something part of the community is pretty normal. And they accept it. And actually they even come sometimes with, like, they can decide what they want to do with it. So they can decide what they want to charge or how they want to manage it. And one of the things that came out in one of the first installations was that the population actually wanted, the assembly decided that they wanted to limit the phone calls to 5 minutes because they see that that you want to talk for a long time, you should just go to your neighbor and talk face to face. The telephone should not destroy the community, the communal feeling. And this idea of the 5 minutes actually is right now, I think, in all the communities, or in all that they was involved, because we present it to them and they like it and it works like that. So, yeah, another interesting key factor is like many of these communities, they don't speak Spanish, or sure, they speak Spanish, but it's not their main language. So, having their own network, they can actually localize it. So, all the audios that you hear when you miss a call or whatever is in the local language of the community. All the text messages that you get, for example, usually the system works that you have to top up every month some certain money, and it's flat rate for all phone calls and all SMS inside of the Rhyzomatica network. So they get an SMS every month reminding them, like, yeah, you have to go and put your, will be like 10 pennies or something like that, the actual price per month. Yeah. Where I am. So, yeah. I can get a bit if you want in the technical details, or I don't know what the people is more interested on here. If I should explain how the tech works from inside, or if you prefer some more social aspects, or...
Tell us more about the effects, the social aspects. This is how it changed life for people.
One of the things to consider is that Mexico, especially Oaxaca is one of the poorest regions in Mexico. That means that there is a lot of people going to work to the USA. So, or not even to the USA, to other parts of Mexico. So, almost everybody has some family out of the village. And so the experience for villages were, most of the villages, it's not that they didn't have telephones. Usually there was 1 or 2 public telephones, but the system was actually even funny to see, but really privacy concern. Because, for example, if some family of you called you, there was this public phone where the call arrives, someone pick it up, and just take the name, hang up, and there is like speakers in the street, so they basically take the microphone and the speakers say, like, whatever, Mike, you have a call, in 10 minutes he's calling back, so you have to come to the public phone. So everybody knows in the village who talks with who and when. So sure, that means that a lot of things have improved on that, and the people feel like they can be closer. And actually, as we are using VoIP calls, That means that the calls to outside from the communities are really cheap, way cheaper than a normal landline phone in Mexico. That means that they can call their family when they want pretty cheaply. But there is also the other side sometimes. I mean, Mexico is also a pretty machist society. So one of the concerns that many times happened was like men coming to us, like telling us like, so now my wife will be able to talk with whoever she wants without me knowing about it, isn't it? And it's like, yeah. So sure, a lot of things in their lives are changing, for good or for bad. Hope is for good. I hear many cases of people, for example, that they got bite by a snake, there's poisonous snakes, and that they were really happy that they had the telephony because they could call and get rescued, but if they didn't, it could have been in a really bad situation, or, there is a lot of stories around. So one of the things to consider is like, even though there is no telephone network there, everybody has a phone already. Everybody once in a while goes to the capital of the region, so everybody actually has phones. And we were having experiences of people actually coming to us with the latest iPhone 5 and asking us how to connect that to the network. Or whatever, so the technology is there, even if they don't have you just turn on the antenna and there is hundreds of people already trying to connect to it. To make it easier, we were reusing the SIM cards that they already have, so they don't have to free their phones. We were not distributing SIM cards. They can just use their SIM card. So their user experience is actually pretty simple in the sense that when they're in the village, they connect their phone without doing anything, connect to the network in the village. When they go to the city, it keeps connecting to the network that they already have. So, I don't know if there's any questions. Yeah, please.
Yeah, obviously it's a really good thing that people can communicate, but as soon as you set up the system where everything goes through a channel, then there's an issue that the people who control the channel have control over the communications. So how does it remain democratic, and how do you prevent people from eavesdropping on each other, if they've got technical access? How does that work?
So technically it will not be so hard for people to eavesdrop each other. In reality, there is no people in the communities with the knowledge to do it. So yeah, we are not doing anything really to secure the communications. We are assuming that the communications are secure anyway. As soon as the communications get out of our network, we can assume that they are spied by the Mexican government. They actually have laws that force ISPs to register all the communications. So, but as long as they are inside of the community, I would say it's out of the capabilities of the people there to do it. But that don't mean that it's not feasible. I mean, you can set up a fake GSM antenna and receive everything and listen everything.
Yeah.
So, So in theory it's possible. We are not doing any protection, we are not doing any encryption or anything. Technically, because we cannot encrypt, we will reduce the SIM cards of the people. And actually, because encryption in GSM is from the 80s. Encryption in the GSM is broken. The day that Rhyzomatica moves to LTE, to 4G, all these things could be improved. But yeah, it's not there yet.
Is there any hostility from the major communication companies?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, sure, a lot. The history is interesting, let's say, because the telcos, they didn't want it together. So the population was asking them to go, and they were actually even offering to put money on the table to make them go, but they didn't want it to go. but Rhyzomatica is getting a lot of news attention, and that's not so good for the telcos. So they are actually starting to try to go there. So in many places where Rhyzomatica went, a few months later appeared a big telco set up. The experience is that the telco thing at the beginning gets a lot of traction in the population because we are not offering internet and the telco does it. But the reality is that they don't have the means to offer internet because their connections are satellite and are really, really bad. So actually the people pretty fast realize that they are paying 10 times more for the telco and they are not getting anything more than what they already have in the community network. So up to now, let's say Rhyzomatica is winning the battle just because it works better. Yeah. But sure, they are there.
First of all, I thought you asked about that. It's like staggering that you've got such small resources. And when you use a base station, it's possibly
That's the microphone, sorry.
Yeah, probably. I cannot hear you, sorry.
First of all, I've said it to you already. I think it's an incredible project. It's incredible what you guys have managed to achieve. And sort of the big telcos charge communities, sort of an exorbitant amount of money. They're not interested in small populations. They're not going to coin it enough. And it costs millions for the equipment to do it in a sort of a corporate, traditional way. But they've literally a sort of sticky tape and blue tack solution, like built this out of complete open source technology using software-defined radio and OpenBSC and OpenBTS. I think it's incredible, really. But I have an interest from a hacking point of view, and a telephony point of view. How much are these OpenBSC systems? I know the OpenBTS ones are about 400 quid or so, but where do you get them, the boards? Because I am interested in playing with one.
So, at the end, Rhyzomatica decided that after testing many competitors, there is several competitors that are similar. They went for some Canadian company called Nutac, that not all the hardware is open hardware. There is a big chunk, like the transmission, like the more lower level thing is actually closed. But it have OpenBTS on top of it. And anyway, they went for this company, even though it's not the cheapest one, because it's pretty reliable. And pretty reliable in hard conditions, like in installations where there is like 30 degrees Celsius during the day and the sun is hitting to it. And when we're talking about communities where you actually have to drive like 8 hours to fix something, you don't want it to break every second week. So I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but I think the numbers are something around $5,000 an installation. That is a bit of money, but it's something that the community can handle. And by experimentation, what we reach out is like one transmitter it ended up working fine for up to around 500 users. Because the main limitation is that you only have 14 slots for call at the same time. That actually, even though it looks really low, in reality, probabilistically, there is not so many calls at the same time. So up to 500 people, the experience is that usually every time that you call, you get a slot free. In villages that are pretty big, we end up setting up several transmitters. But yeah. More questions? I can show a bit more of the techie details you're interested on. I have some nice slides that are not from me. Give me a second. Okay.
You want me to act as a microphone stuff?
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to get the slides in the screen. So how do you get full screen with this thing? Yeah. Anyway, the basic hardware thing that we install is there is two main components. One is the BTS. The BTS is basically a transmitter. So the BTS is this box that we buy from this Canadian company that I mentioned it. And basically just comes out of the box working fine. And the BSC is basically a PC. The first BSCs were set it up with Pentium 4, just take it out of garbage. We discovered that it's nice to buy high quality hardware if we don't want to go there often to fix it. So we end up with these, these industrial boxes that they have no fans and SSD disks and everything. But anyway, it's a Linux box that is connected to the BTS through an Ethernet cable and do all the controls. So the BTS is just a transmitter, so the antennas, and it does all the whatever waves. And the BSC is the one that actually handles the users, like it routes calls and do all the fancy things. So all the stuff in the BSC is free software. Many things are not done by Rhyzomatica, many things are done by the community. But the parts that Rhyzomatica did are public. And actually there is even Puppet rules. So you can just download the Puppet thing of Rhyzomatica, run it, and you have a full BSC as Rhyzomatica has it in the villages. This BSC box is actually a bit more complicated. The full picture will be that for whoever is interested in all the details. So basically all that part is in this Linux box. And there is many components, many daemons. Maybe some people know FreeSwitch. That is a VoIP generic daemon, similar to Asterix. FreeSwitch is the one that actually routes calls and is known for that. One of the cool things of the architecture of Rhyzomatica is that it's meant to not have any single point of failure. So the villages are autonomous. If a villages get no internet connection, the network is working. But and if they have connection between each other, there is a React database, there is a distributed database that does all the information for the routing. So the villages actually talk to each other without passing through the servers of Rhyzomatica. So it will be resilient, we'll see. And yeah, there is some other fancy things to handle SMS called Canal, and FreeSwitch connects through VoIP to the outside world or to another stations. And yeah, probably I don't need to get into all the details, but that's more or less the big picture. And yeah, questions? So I guess we can wrap up. Someone wants to know more. Yeah. And? I'm not sure I can give it to you, because if they are not public, it's because we are lazy. No, because I can give you these slides. These were written for a conference in New York 1 year ago. So, yeah, sure. And I didn't explain the RCCN, the box on the right down, is actually a software that Rhyzomatica wrote. So it's just a web interface that the people in the villages can use to control the network. So they can register users and see, for example, it even controls how much money you have in the VoIP account to make calls to outside, because they have a VoIP account per village. And yeah. Another detail that they can tell is like, we cannot give numbers that are public in the network because they're expensive. So we cannot give a number per phone, but we can give one number per village. So basically, what every village asks for as many numbers as they want in different places. So for example, some villages have one number in California, another number in, usually several of them in the USA in different places, so the families can call locally. And the number is this classical way that you call, and there is a mechanical voice telling you put the extension, and you just mark the extension of the person and you reach the person at the end. So the people that is calling them is usually making local calls to whatever region they are calling. So I guess that's it.
Has working out the kind of costs, the local economy costs of it being complicated, or is it simply being a question of like, these are your overheads and you need this? I mean, is it economically
Yeah, now I understand the question. I'll repeat what I think I understand, if not, ask me again. The plan is to be economically rentable, not profitable like to grow up, but so the business model to say is Rhyzomatica, this organization that set up the networks, is a non-profit. Up to now is living because it's getting money from external funding. Funding, I'm not talking about private funding like foundations and stuff like that. But their plan is to live out like for they like every user pay every month 30 pesos for the connection. That's normally depends. I think now it's 40 actually. Anyway, they pay something, and Rhyzomatica is getting something like 1/4 of that in exchange of support. So that now they should be starting to be rentable, like to be able to pay salaries just out of that. And the villages keep the rest of the money. And the rest of the money is used to pay back the equipment that they set up. So it's too soon to see if it actually pay back well. But I mean, Rhyzomatica is not giving for free the equipment. Rhyzomatica is actually is buying the equipment for them, but they are just giving the villages pay what the equipment is worth, and they pay it in advance, and they later try to recover it with this. So yeah, hopefully it's sustainable. We'll see. It's too early. It's been running only since a couple of years. Like 1 year ago, there was 2 villages. Now there is 19. So yeah, it's growing.
You said that it was running on 2G and potentially 4G would arrive at some point. Did I get that right? What would it take for it to be 4G, and why would it be put in? What would be the purpose? Aside from, I guess, encryption and...
It's not just encryption. There is way more interesting things in 4G. Right now the problem to go for 4G is that there is no portable transmitters that can work on 4G. So the equipment that you need to work with 4G right now is only the equipment that the big corpos are using. And it's something that is completely out of the scope of this project. When I'm talking about this transmitter for the big telcos is a toy. I mean, the big telcos set up transmitters that are way more. This transmitter is just 50 watt. And the big telcos, I think they are working on, I don't know, maybe you have the numbers, several hundred watts. Anyway, so we need affordable hardware that can do 4G, and we need open source software that does it, that we don't have it. The good thing of 4G, GSM was full of patents and expired. 3G is still full of patents and they didn't expire, so no one wants to touch it. No one outside of the telcos. But 4G is completely out of patents. So it's designed from scratch to be free. So it's good. And the other interesting point is that all the transmission, even the phone calls, are data. So it's not anymore analogic signals. We are just moving digital signals. That makes the life way easier. And it will make possible also to distribute internet through the network. So, sure, it will be nicer to reach there, but it's not going to be there until, I don't know, 3-5 years.
Can I ask some more about this?
Sure.
That question was kind of a technical question that has a cultural implication for me. I spend a lot of time in London where you see a lot of people literally glued to their glowing devices. And I wonder what kind of cultural impacts that might have if sort of high availability and high bandwidth, potentially higher bandwidth mobile technology becomes available to individuals.
I'm worried as well, but one of the things that I learned in Mexico is that I'm not the person to worry about it. I mean, they are worried about it. And they don't need the European white guy to come in to tell them what they should or what they should not do. So, sure, I think my feeling is that the communities, they are worried also about that. But that don't mean that they don't want to get into the new technologies. So, yeah. For good or for bad, right now the internet connection in these places is so bad that they are not going to have half language even if we get 4G there. So, don't worry. But yeah, I don't know. When it comes, I guess there will be discussion, but discussion in the communities and by the communities. Not.
When you say that everyone has a phone, are they like all dumb phones or you have smartphones besides normal?
I will say 50%. That is big ratio for a place where they don't have telephony. So yeah, crappy Chinese Android phones are pretty common in Mexico. Because also the Mexican telecos, they charge you for internet, but they don't charge you for Facebook, neither for WhatsApp. Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to enter there. That's horrible. So yeah, people is used that to have Facebook for free in their mobile devices. Any more questions?
Do you think it's had any effect on the way that their society, their governments, and I mean, presumably they had a sustainable system before, and obviously a strong community who communicated, their decisions and ideas and stuff. Because it's such a kind of insular environment, it's interesting to wonder whether the fact that they can now, in theory, vote on a concept or that kind of thing, has that emerged in any way?
I don't think it has changed in really big things. It has changed in some things. I mean, they were used to use the radio to broadcast things about what's happening in the village. Now they often do it through SMS. That is more direct. But I don't think it changed their way of govern themselves or to organize the society. But I don't know. I was not living in the village. That I was just going there for a few days, spending some time with them. But I was not in the deeper day things, so I cannot really measure it so much. Yeah.
I think it's in some way inevitable that it would change social relations because if you have a radio transmitter, I imagine that not everyone has a deal with FM transmitter, and you've got one in the village, right? So whereas mobile technology, cellular phones allow everyone to transmit on a one-to-one basis. So the cultural impact on that does inevitably bring some level of individualization of the community. My biggest concern is
Yeah.
I'd just like to identify very positively with cultural immigration. One family lived in Ireland. I used to get on the board there was a phone. Sheffield Telco in my parents' house
in sort of the southeast of Ireland, basically. So I think it's really cool when you can use some technology to reconnect people. I used to work for a project in Sheffield, and there's a lot of Pakistani and Somali people in the area. And even though they've been mostly using things like Skype and stuff, it's really cool to reconnect people that are away from home and things like that. So there's loads of really heartwarming, brilliant things that I think you're telling me about this project, and quite excited about it, if I'm honest about it.
Yeah, I just think on the social aspects, two things. First of all, I think if you have something, say access to a computer, we can all end up with an internet addiction, or we can use it in a positive way for our lives, and I think it's more to do with what we've got underlying. So if we've got trauma or a shit life, or we're feeling really kind of disconnected, then we're more likely to end up addicted to the internet and unable to escape from the Facebook refresh thing. That doesn't mean that the internet itself is bad. It means that we all have shit, individualized lives living in cities where we feel really estranged, and the problem is that. And I think it's the same with anything, like any drug or whatever. It's like you can use it to enhance your life, or you can use it to escape, and maybe the latter is where you might see the problems coming about. If they've got like a strong community, then it's great. Like, I agree with what you were saying as well. It's like we can't really come in from the outside and go like, we're allowed the internet, but you're not, because it might ruin your like thing. It's like, it's great. Like, this technology should belong to the whole planet. Like, they're eligible for that. We can learn from them. Like, the guy was talking yesterday about when he was doing the project in the north of India, and like sharing the technology there. Like, this allows people to actually access other technology to then develop like open source hardware, the kind of parabolic things that he was talking about, and then send that information back. You can use Wikipedia by SMS, so we're opening up like technology and knowledge sharing amongst like people who have lots that they can teach us, as well as, you know, we're actually like horizontalizing the information and knowledge and technology. I think it's really fucking awesome.
Just final advert. One of the reasons why I was there is because I was joining a team of people that was going there to make a documentary about that. So hopefully by the beginning of next year there should be a documentary about that. And maybe around September or something there will be a crowdfunding campaign. So hopefully you will hear about that and you can help to spread it. But yeah, that was the publicity. So, anything else? So I guess we can close. So thank you for the good questions.